Hello, this is Steve Grizzetti, co-founder of MoviePix.com, and welcome to part 3 of our 8-part series we're calling Basic Training with Adobe Photoshop Elements. Today we're going to look at an important feature that a lot of people don't take much advantage of, but which can be tremendously powerful in Photoshop Elements, and that is layers. Often, when you're working with layers, they can be virtually invisible. The output that you do, whether it's a JPEG or whether it's a TIFF or another graphic format, may not even show the layers. They may only exist in Photoshop in a PSD file. But they can be very important, and they can also be very powerful in creating your image. Here's an image that I created. It's a family portrait, just sort of the opening of maybe it's a greeting card or a DVD cover for our annual family DVD. So although this picture of my wife and daughter and me standing against a background may look flat, it is actually several layers stacked on top of each other in a variety of ways. So let's take a look at what these various layers are. Look over here on the right hand side of the photo editor workspace. You'll see the layers palette. The layers palette, I'm going to extend it up here, and you can see actually we have several layers here. There is a background layer. There is a layer of me which has a layer mask applied to it. There's a layer of my wife, an alternate photo of my wife that I have turned off right now, a picture of my daughter, the shape that is the oval there behind the word greetings, and text. Now text, whenever you use it in Photoshop Elements, is always going to be a separate layer, and that's very important and very functional because anytime you want you can edit the text, right? So you want it to remain continually editable. Once you turn this into a graphic of some sort, a JPEG or something, your text is no longer editable. Because of the nature of a shape layer in Photoshop Elements, a shape is always editable also. I can change the size of it and shape of it. It's not a raster image at this point, so that means it is not resolution dependent. I can change the size or shape of it without dealing with any pixel issues. It's not true, of course, with the raster parts of the picture, which would be the photographs. The advantage here of having these different pictures, these were actually each taken separately of each individual. I can position them anywhere I want. I can move her around. And I can position them exactly as I'd like. You can see I can also turn off certain layers. Turn on layers by clicking on this layer visibility and swap in a different photo. So there are a number of advantages to layers. One is that as different pieces in the picture, they're each independently editable. Two is if whenever you're using text, the text remains editable as long as it's a separate layer. Your shapes remain essentially vector art, which means that you can reshape them and resize them until they're rasterized without any concern for resolution. And you can even change the order of things. If I, for instance, wanted to take this graphic here, which is in front of me, I could change the shape and size of it. And I can drag it down in the layers palette until it's now behind us and create a totally different picture. So there's a lot of potential here when you're using layers to do a wide variety of things and to work with your photo. We have a photograph here now, because you can see if you look over at the layers palette, it's background. That means it's just one layer. It's not even a layer, it's just a flat image. If I double click on the background here and select OK, we've now turned this from background into layer 0. Now watch what happens when I erase with the eraser. See that checkerboard background? That checkerboard indicates that it's now transparent. In other words, because this is a layer, when I'm erasing it, I'm not replacing it with a background color. Instead, I'm actually removing things from the image. If I use my magic wand here, I may be able to select, holding down the Shift key at the same time as I'm clicking. And now with this background selected, I can press delete, and you can see that I've removed the background completely. And now that the background is removed, I can actually open a new photo here, and I can drag that background into this picture, and by arranging the order of the layers, put it behind the little girl. There's a lot of advantages to keeping things in a layer format or working with things in layers. Now you can have an unlimited number of layers in a Photoshop document. You can turn layers on and off, disable and enable them. So whenever you save your picture file, if you're working on a picture file in parts or if you're working on it in layers, I encourage you to save, in addition to saving whatever your final output is, whether it's a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever, you should also save a PSD file that keeps your image in layers. That way you can still manipulate the individual parts if you want it individually. So layers, very, very powerful tool. Just think of it as a stack, and in this stack you're seeing around or through certain objects. If you'd like to know more about layers or any of the other things we discuss here in our basic training, we encourage you to check out some of the many tutorials and tips we have here on MoviePix.com. And also for a much more detailed discussion of all of this, and particularly a discussion of layers and the advantages of using layers, be sure to check out the MoviePix.com guides for Premiere Elements and for Photoshop Elements. They're available on the MoviePix store and at Amazon.com. And I hope you'll stay with us for the whole 8 sessions of these basic training with Photoshop Elements. I'm Steve Grizzetti. We'll see you again real soon.